Arizona Wildlife Views, brought to you by the sale of hunting and fishing licenses and the Heritage Fund, lottery dollars working for wildlife. Some projects made possible by the Sport Fish and Wildlife Restoration Fund. Hello and welcome to Arizona Wildlife Views. I'm your host, Jim Harkin. Tonight we'll take a look at the issues surrounding the wild burros of Arizona. Then we'll preview a long-awaited shooting facility in the northern part of our state. But first, we go up on the Mogollon Rim, where an endangered species has reached an important milestone in its recovery. These frogs, Chiricahua leopard frogs to be exact, are being prepared for a very special journey. Beginning here at the Phoenix Zoo, where they were reared from egg masses collected in the wild, they are getting ready to go home.
In order to prepare them, we've given them prophylactic treatment with a solution called itraconazole. It's a fungicide. It'll help us prevent the spread of disease, in particular a disease called chytridiomycosis. And we are now treating them. They bathe for approximately an hour in the solution, and after they bathe in the solution, we will rinse them and then package them in plastic containers with moist paper towels and transport them up to where they will be released.
The Chiricahua leopard frog has been listed as threatened under the Endangered Species Act since 2002. So special care is taken to give them the best chance possible for survival in the wild.
There are three major causes of declines of native amphibians in Arizona. And the first is a fungal disease, which we, prior to releasing them from the Phoenix Zoo, we treated them with a fungicide. So disease is a very important threat to native leopard frog populations. A second major threat is the drought that we've had for the past 10 or so years. Major change in our aquatic hydrological cycles, which have impacted native amphibian populations. And then the third major cause of declines of these populations of frogs has been non-native aquatic organisms that have been spreading throughout Arizona. Crayfish, bullfrogs, and some of the non-native fish.
After the frogs are treated and rinsed, they're packed in moist containers, loaded into coolers, and driven to their release sites along the Mogollon Rim.
We're at a beautiful little watered canyon up near Payson, and this is within the historical range of the Chiricahua leopard frog, and not far downstream there was a historical record from here. And they used to be very abundant in many of the small creeks and streams along the Mogollon Rim, White Mountains, and the associated Sky Island canyons down in southeastern Arizona. But in the past 30 years or so, Chiricahua leopard frogs, along with some of the other native leopard frogs, have declined quite dramatically.
To help stop that decline, Arizona Game and Fish began returning captive raised frogs to the wild in 1995, and today marked a major milestone in their recovery. The 10,000th Chiricahua leopard frog that was reared at the Phoenix Zoo was released back into its native territory.
You guys ready? So just kind of put it near the water's edge. And then, yep. Let's see how.
There you go.
There it goes. Very cool.
Number
10,000.
Yay! Awesome.
Oh yeah.
Once the Chiricahua leopard frog was listed, a recovery team was created to help bring the species back from the brink of extinction. That plan includes releases of captive bred frogs, habitat restoration, and monitoring. So why is a little greenish-brown frog worth all this effort?
They're important competitors and predators, as well as prey items. Native leopard frogs used to be super abundant in most of the canyons. So birds and blackhawks and many other birds and small mammals and even bears will consume a big leopard frog sometimes. So many animals depended on them as a prey item. And for food, and they also were big predators of a lot of insect pests that we don't particularly like having around. Another reason that they're so important is that they're often thought of as important bioindicators. How good a job humans are doing of taking care of the planet. And they've been likened to the canary in a coal mine. And so they're important indicators of our stewardship. So the better that frogs are doing, the better place that you and I have the cleaner water and the fresher air that we have to breathe.
All in all, on this August day, 1,700 Chiricahua leopard frogs and tadpoles were released at 5 different sites in the Tano National Forest.
This project has been an amazing partnership between the Phoenix Zoo, U.S. Forest Service, Fish and Wildlife Service, and the grazing permittee has become a good supporter, strong supporter of Chiricahua leopard frog recovery. And hats off to the grazing permittee, because you don't often think of cattle ranchers as being a friend of a frog, but you know, cattle need fresh water, as do Chiricahua leopard frogs. So you know, there is a common bond there, and it's very pleasing that this particular rancher didn't look at us askance and walk away from the table when he heard we were talking about recovering frogs in his area.
It never gets old. Releasing the frogs is definitely the most rewarding part of all of our work, all the office work, all the field work, the habitat evaluation, the habitat renovations to put these frogs back out into the landscape. The releases are definitely, they make it all very worth it. And then to go back and monitor our releases and see the success, it's pretty amazing.
It's the goal that someday Chiricahua leopard frog populations will recover to the point where they can be taken off the endangered species list, and that will be a good day indeed. One species that there's no shortage of in Arizona are burros. While they may capture your imagination, they can be devastating to the landscape.
You don't have to venture very far to encounter some of the descendants of Arizona's mining history. Images of the gold prospector walking alongside his trusty burro, out to seek his fortune, remains ingrained into our nation's past, just as indelible as the cowboy riding off into the western sunset. Unfortunately, our romanticized version of wild burros has given way to the harsh realities of their impact upon the landscape.
These are pack animals that they had that they just turned loose, so probably a better description, instead of calling them wild, we like to call them as feral, which gives people a little bit better of a description of they're not native to Arizona.
They may not be native to Arizona, but they thrive here. Burros evolved thousands of years ago in the deserts of North Africa, where the climate is much harsher, making our southwestern deserts a very hospitable environment for them.
Even in our worst years, our habitat's lush to them, and they're able to survive more so than even our native animals, the bighorn sheep or the mule deer.
While most western states have more free-roaming horses than burros, Arizona is just the opposite. Our wildlands are not necessarily good horse country, but the burros are making the most of it, with nearly 2,000 of them, compared to about 400 horses.
The burros do cause a number of problems. There's lots of trailing. They cause dust beds where they basically wallow. It's like a buffalo wallow. They wallow in the dirt. They do affect our habitat, the trees, the Palo Verde trees. They love to eat on them. And the thing about a burro, or it's like a horse. A burro and a horse are the same, in the same basic family. They have upper and lower incisors. So when they bite, they can bite all the way down to the ground, and they'll actually take the plant and they'll nip it all the way down to the ground. Whereas a bighorn sheep or even a cow or deer does not have upper incisors. It only has lower incisors. So when a deer comes, it basically just kind of picks at things, but it doesn't nip, what we call nipping, all the way down to the base of the tree. or base of the plant. And when you nip something all the way down to the base, it takes a lot longer for that to regrow or resprout.
Wildlife Manager Stuart Conkey patrols Game Management Unit 44A, which includes Alamo Lake, and he struggles with a system that seems ineffective at controlling the damage the herds are doing to the area.
Burros are a federally protected animal from the Wild Horse and Burro Act in the mid 1970s. The Game and Fish does not have management control over them. It's one of the few animals Arizona Game and Fish cannot manage or control. The management and control of burros is strictly underneath the Bureau of Land Management. They're like everybody else in government. Their budgets have been very strapped, and in the past they have not had the money to remove burros. The Wild Horse and Burro Act states that they will allow burros in areas that were occupied at the time of the act. So they went out back in the 70s and they took maps and they drew circles around all the areas that they had burros. That is what we call a herd area. Now, once they decided the herd areas, then they looked at whether there was water for them, whether the land status, whether it's private land, state land, that sort of thing. And so they derived what's called herd management areas. So that's where our burros should be today, is within these herd management areas.
Since burros can't read maps, a herd management area looks pretty much the same to them as every other area. And as their numbers continue to grow, it falls to the federal government to control their population.
Once they derive a herd management area, then they come in and try to figure out what's called an AML, or appropriate management level. It's kind of like if you had a livestock permit, this is how many cows you could have on this range. Well, they derived an AML, appropriate management level, for Alamo for about 160 animals. We were at pretty close to that in 2005. We haven't done any surveys. They haven't had the money to do surveys, or they haven't had the money to do roundups since then. The average burro herd their reproduction rate's about 17, anywhere between 15 and 20%. Around here, we've kind of figured out it's about 17 to 18%. So every year you're going to have a recruitment rate of 18%. So that means within 4 to 5 years, they double their population.
2 minutes. 2 minutes remain.
This is a wild horse and burro adoption. The Bureau, the BLM, we gather excess wild horses and burros throughout the western United States and put them up for adoption. We try to find good homes for these animals. These are excess animals that the range just would not support, so we bring them in, we give them all of their vaccinations, we check them and everything, and then we try to find good homes for them, for somebody to take care of them. After a year, then they're eligible to get title for them, and then they become their animal.
This wild horse and burro adoption event was held in Flagstaff, one of several the BLM holds each year around the state. Most of the horses were from Idaho and Nevada, but nearly all of the burros came from Arizona. Erica and Michael Pillow of Flagstaff came here specifically looking to adopt a burro.
We recently lost one of our other horses, and we'd like to have a companion for our other one. We obviously think they're very cute and easy keepers, and so it would just be exciting to get one.
For somebody who's interested in adopting a burro, mainly, be sure that they have the facilities and the patience. It's going to take a little patience just to get them gentled down. If people expect them to be able to be petted, immediately, that's obviously not going to happen, but it's amazing how quick they come along. And, patience and working with the animal, they respond very, I think, in relation to horses, they respond a little bit quicker. And they'll gentle down and be following you around before you know it.
Sometimes it was hard to tell who was more curious, the potential bidders or the burros.
I have previously sponsored wild mustangs and burros before, and I really feel like this is an important part of managing our land is culling. So I think this is important for people to rescue these rather than by breeding.
While the burros drew a lot of attention from the crowd, the Pillows were the only people to adopt one, a scruffy fellow they planned to name Carlos. Several of the horses found new homes, but the rest face an uncertain future.
We're trying to find these animals a good home, but basically because the laws tells us we have to. You know, we've got, right now we've got 24,000 wild horses in the Midwest and South Dakota that are excess animals that there's no adoption demand for whatsoever. And we've, you know, and so we're taking care of them. We're paying for a rancher to run wild horses for us rather than cattle. You know, the horses and the burros continue to reproduce regardless of what we try. We always have to remove excess animals, and therefore, you know, it helps us to kind of relieve some of the strain on our budget of having to feed these animals and have them standing in feedlots rather than somebody's corral that's going to do something with the animal. You know, the horses, we've had these wild horses in the Olympics. They do all the fancy riding stuff. You can train the wild horse to do anything that you can do with any domestic horse. Burros, kids can ride them, you can pack them, you can do all kinds of stuff with them. They're great pets. They get real friendly real quick.
The federal government is considering new legislation that would change the way these herds are managed in the future. But in the meantime, the best that wildlife managers like Stuart Conkey can do is try to deal with the situation at hand.
So not only do they tear apart the habitat, they cause trailing, which causes erosion. They're very protective of their areas. And typically, if you have a lot of burros in an area, you're not going to see a lot of deer, a lot of bighorn sheep. Some of the other things they do carry diseases that will affect our native deer and sheep population. So basically, they're not a native animal. They hurt the habitat that they're in, and for the most part, they're more productive than our native animals.
It's been a long 15 years in the making, but northern Arizona is finally getting a shooting range. Join us as we travel up to Foster Ranch to check on the status of the new shooting facility.
The rifle's report echoes off hills surrounding the 160-acre Foster Ranch property in Coconino County.
And fire!
The future site of the Northern Arizona Shooting Range.
Gave me goosebumps today. It's a thrill. It is an absolute thrill to be out here and take part in the first official shooting on the Foster Ranch property.
For some, the thrill's been a long time coming.
Fire!
It sure has been, and it really feels good to finally be out here and hear some shots in northern Arizona at an official shooting range. It's yet to be completed, but we conducted the noise test this morning, and that's the first step.
Got to tell you, it is really good. I shot a round of sporting clays on an informal course here this morning, and it really feels good. Being able to shoot at 10:30 in the morning in the middle of August is absolutely wonderful. And I look forward to construction on the range and completion of the range, and I'm sure that this will become one of the more popular recreational venues around Flagstaff.
Northern Arizona residents have been without a rifle and pistol shooting range since 1968. In 1994, closures of the local shotgun and archery ranges resulted in one of Arizona's largest communities being without a designated place for recreational shooting. Surrounded by the Coconino National Forest, the property is located approximately 15 miles east of Flagstaff and 5 miles south of the town of Winona. The property is in the mid-6,000-foot elevation, consisting of pinyon juniper and high country ground cover.
It's a great day to be here, standing here, talking about the Northern Arizona Shooting Range. This is an effort that started 15 or 16 odd years ago. It's a great day because we do have this piece of property purchased, and range development and all the permitting and things can begin. And
from a Forest Service perspective, we are extremely tickled to see this process moving along and seeing an opportunity for shooting sports on national forest systems and adjacent lands for the shooters around Flagstaff in northern Arizona.
We looked at approximately 50 sites throughout the Flagstaff regional area, and a little over a year ago found this particular site, which was somewhat unique in that it is a private inholding within the National Forest. Earlier this year, they directed the department to open direct negotiations with the then owner of the land, and we now own it.
We did our due diligence here on this site. We came together on the terms, be able to buy the property. Now we own a piece of private property that we think now we found a home. And the community is excited. Flagstaff is very excited to have a shooting range out here. And we're here today to celebrate that event.
Without a formal range in the area, residents resorted to a practice called wildcat shooting, going off in the forest and setting up their own targets. While shooting on public lands is an allowed recreation, sometimes it's not the safest practice.
it's very important that we have a range in this region of the state. Currently, there is no organized official shooting site in this part of the state.
Fire.
We have wildcat shooting. A little bit of it's going on here a ways from us this morning. And when we have wildcat shooting, we have litter problems, we have huge safety issues, and it's just not a suitable way to do that. Safety concerns become very great.
So the benefit of having a designated shooting range and having the range master and the safety implications and the design and the standards that are built into it really provides for a much safer environment. In addition, it also offers the opportunity to have much more of an information and education component built into it so that young shooters and operators of different types of shooting sports can engage, learn about it, and develop as they progress.
We have a lot of official shooters that don't have an official place to shoot, such as the Highway Patrol, the Flagstaff Police Department, the Coconino County Sheriff's Office, NAU Police, game rangers, we got park rangers, and those sorts of people who are involved in law enforcement that have to qualify several times a year need an official place to shoot.
The $1.1 million property purchase came at no expense to taxpayers, state or local.
Fire.
Because Game and Fish receives no tax dollars from the state's general fund and operates under a user-pay, user-benefit model, the property was purchased and will be developed through the sale of licenses to hunters and anglers.
Fire.
The shooting range property here in northern Arizona was purchased with funds that come out of our Game and Fish Fund that are generated out of what we call Colby funds. Those funds are from the sportsman's monies that are the sale of tags and hunting licenses. The Game and Fish Department is not a general fund agency, which means we receive no general fund taxpayer dollars. These are all sportsman generated dollars. The development funds will come from a little different funding source. That's a federal fund that we call the Pittman-Robertson Act, which is also a tax that's on sporting goods, ammunition, rifles, things that hunters and fishermen buy across the nation, and it generates funds. And those are the type of funds that we will use in development of the northern Arizona shooting range after we've acquired this property.
Fire. Fire.
This piece of property was, you might say, fast-tracked because it was a private inholding in the National Forest. The Arizona Game and Fish Department, once we discovered the site, discovered that there was nothing close that was going to be an issue with sound.
An independent sound engineer was employed to run a sound study. In that study, receivers were placed at various distances from the site. Weapons were fired both individually and collectively. and the results recorded.
No. Yeah, all I had was wind noise.
Even before the creation of the shooting bays, sound berms, and other range improvements, the sound level emitted from the range is within state guidelines.
It is a little remote, so we hope to upgrade the road so that people can come out here in their family vehicle, bring their kids, and recreate here.
Ultimately, we would certainly hope that it would become a destination spot. That may take a few years in order to get built out to that degree, but primitive camping is planned at the initial stages of range construction so that folks will be able to come out here for multiple day shoots.
Project is coming together finally after many, many years of work on commissioners, past commissioners, current commissioners, and staff. It's a great day.
I can't wait to visit that northern Arizona range. We'll be coming back with updates for you next year. That's our show for this evening. If you have questions about anything you saw on the show, or you'd like to sign up for the latest e-newsletter, check out our website at azgft.gov. For producers Gary Schaefer and Carol Lind, I'm your host Jim Harkin. We'll see you next time.